Hi everyone and welcome to another video. I haven't filmed a video in a few weeks now. Just had a lot going on and not really had the time to film any book related videos. I'm actually going to go through with you all the books that I read in April and May. I decided not to do a wrap up at the end of April because I didn't actually read that much in April. I only read about 4 books, which is not very many for me. So I thought I'd continue it on to the end of May as well. And it's nearly the end of May. I don't think I'm going to finish any more books. It's the 29th of May today as I'm filming this, and I don't think I'm going to finish any more books before the end of the month. I have a nice little list here of all the books that I read in the past 2 months. I've got a stack next to me of some of them, and some of them are on my Kindle, some are audio and stuff. And I've also got a few DNFs. There was 3 books I think I started in the past 2 months but I didn't actually finish, so I'm going to quickly go through the DNFs with you first just to get those out of the way. So one of them was Trespasses by Louise Kennedy, and I just couldn't get into this. I didn't like the writing, and also in this book there was no speech marks with all the speech as well, which did really annoy me as well. I don't know, found it really boring, didn't understand who any of the characters were, I didn't care, so gave that one up. And I also started reading, I read a few chapters of I Am Pilgrim by Terry Hayes. And this book actually one of my friends recommended to me, and she said this was like the best book she ever read. I had really high hopes for this, and I may come back to it at some point in the future, I don't know. I mean, I've got it on Audible, so I could actually listen to it in the future instead of reading it, because I started reading it and listening to the audiobook at the same time because I couldn't get into it, and I still couldn't get into it, so I have just given up on that one for now. I think also it's summertime at the moment, and this is like a 900-page book, and the pages are super thin, and are just not really my vibe at the moment, so I may come back to it at some point in the future, but for now that was a DNF. And then also I do have the other book, but it's in my bedroom somewhere. It was like Down by the Water by, I think it was written by the same person that wrote The Girl on the Train, and I started reading this book and again just couldn't get into it. Thought it was really boring, so gave up on that one as well. Don't know if I'll ever come back to that one, probably not, because it just didn't appeal to me. So that was my 3 DNFs from the past couple of months. And then moving on to the books that I read in the past couple of months. These aren't necessarily going to be in the exact order that I read them in. They're roughly in the same order but not completely. So actually this book I finished at the end of March. But I'd already filmed my wrap up at that point before I'd finished it. So Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I have actually got a reading vlog where I read this book in, which I can link in the description below, and I'll put a card up above. I was quite disappointed in this, to be honest. It was okay, but it took me a while to get through. It's basically a paranormal kind of romance between a vampire and a werewolf. And it's like an arranged marriage kind of thing, and then stuff happens and blah blah blah, but it just wasn't keeping my attention. Like, I feel like it was really slow. At the end it did pick up a bit and I got through the end of it quite quickly, but for the most part it just wasn't anything special. It was okay, like I didn't hate it, but it just wasn't my favourite. It wasn't very memorable for me. I gave that 3.5 out of 5 stars. And then also in a reading vlog I read Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey, which I will link in the description below the vlog as well. I read this book and another book for a reading vlog, which was reading the highest and lowest rated books on my TBR, and this was one of the lowest rated books on my TBR, and I can understand why, because I didn't really enjoy this. I didn't like the characters. I thought the main characters were very immature, especially the female main character. I think she was meant to be like 30 years old and she was just doing things that like young teenagers would do. I don't know, I just wasn't really feeling this. I listened to some of this by audio and some of it physically, but if I try and give you a rough idea of the plot right now, I'm not really going to do it justice because I can't really remember. This was right at the beginning of April, so it seems like forever since I read this. But if you do want to know like my more in-depth thoughts about this book, then obviously check out the video where I vlogged my experience reading it. But I remember there was something to do with like secret letters. She was writing him letters and he didn't know who it was and blah blah blah. That's why it's called Secretly Yours, obviously. And she'd had a crush on the guy for years and years before, and then they rekindle again. They meet up again in the future, and like, well, in the present, not the future. But yeah, I can't really remember too much about it, but wasn't really a huge fan of this. I gave it 2.75 stars, wouldn't really recommend. I don't really think Tessa Bailey is necessarily an author for me, so I'm not sure I'm going to pick up much more by her in the future. And also for that video, reading highest and lowest books on my TBR, I also read, it's actually A Man Called Uva, but it says on there A Man Called Otto as well, because that's the title of the film. I know they made a film out of it with Tom Hanks as the main character, and they renamed the main character to Otto. So I don't know why, but anyway, this one was actually the highest rated book on my TBR that wasn't part of a series, So I had high expectations about this, and I'd heard a lot of good things about this book as well. I'd heard a lot of people saying it was really emotional, made them cry, or it's just really good book. I wasn't a huge fan of this, and I can understand, don't get me wrong, I can understand why people would absolutely love this. It's very like heartwarming at the same time, but it is also a very sad book. And I feel like there was a lot of talk about getting old and death and feeling depressed, not wanting to live anymore, that sort of vibe, and it just gave me a horrible feeling inside me and just didn't make me feel good. So I'm not really a fan of the topics of like getting old and cancer and death and that sort of thing. I don't like reading about that sort of thing because I read to get away from real life and get away from the horrible things in real life. So yeah, that's why I didn't really enjoy this. It's basically about a grumpy old man. He doesn't want to live anymore, and then he meets some new neighbours and things happen and go from there, and it kind of keeps going back and forth between his past and the current timeline. So it shows like his past with his wife and all that sort of thing as he grew up and everything like that, and then it comes back to the present in other chapters as well. But it was okay, but wasn't my favourite. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I can understand why people like it, but it's just not my sort of book. In April, I did read Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare, which is this massive book. I think it was like over 800 pages, absolutely massive chunker of a book. I've been putting this off for the past like 2 years. But I finally got to it and I read it. It took me about a couple of weeks to read, which is the reason I didn't really read much in April, is because it took me so long to get through this one. This is the 3rd book in the Dark Artifices series, so I've now completed this series. So it's another series checked off my to-read list. I did fully enjoy this. I absolutely love it. The only thing I don't love about Cassandra Clare's books is the fact that the chapters are super long, which does kind of make me get through it a bit slower. I feel like if the chapters were shorter, I would have got through this a lot quicker, but I don't know, just a weird kind of thing there. But I can't really tell you what this book's about because it's obviously the 3rd book in a series, but it's part of like the Cassandra Clare Shadowhunters universe. So there's multiple series in this universe and they all kind of link in some way, and this is the 3rd series that I've read, so I've got them on my shelf here. So I read the half of the Mortal Instruments series first, and then I read the Infernal Devices series, and then I read the other 3 books in the Mortal Instruments series, and then I moved on to this series. And there's also other books in between those books which have like mini novellas and things like that. So it is a very big universe, and I'm slowly getting my way through them. I've only got a few books left to read in that universe, so yeah, but it's just definitely one of my favourite universes, favourite characters in here, and quite a few of the characters in this book are from like the City of Bones Mortal Instruments series as well. If anyone wants me to do a whole video like going through the order you should read all these books in, because I know it's a bit of a minefield, there are just so many books in this like Shadowhunter world that I know it's very overwhelming of where to start and what order to read them in. So yeah, if you'd like me to do that sort of video, then I can do that. Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. Oh, my rating, 4.5 stars. And next I listened to 2 audiobooks. Well, I listened to these intertwined with these other books, like, but yeah, they're the next 2 that I'm going to talk about anyway. And this is like my new obsession, and that is Bridgerton. I absolutely love the TV series. I randomly started listening to the audiobook of the first one, which is The Duke and I can borrow these for free from my library. So I listened to the first book, and then I ended up watching season 1, and I went straight on to season 2. I was like, right, I love this, I'm going on to season 2. So I actually then listened to the 2nd book in the series whilst I was watching season 2, and that one was The Viscount Who Loved Me, which is the 2nd book. And then also season 3's just come out, or the first half of season 3's just come out, and I am obsessed. I love it. I've watched season 3 twice. I just love it so much. I love Colin and Penelope. They're some of my favourite characters. I love Penelope because she is a fellow wallflower like myself, and she likes to be at the side watching things rather than being the centre of attention, and that is definitely me. And I'm sure most of you know kind of roughly what Bridgerton is about. They're like Regency romances, and the main characters in this series are the Bridgertons, so that's what it's called, obviously, the Bridgerton series. And there's the mum and her 8 children, and each of the books follow a different one of her children and their love story. So obviously on the TV series it's slightly different. I mean, the first season follows the first book pretty much, and then the second one follows the second book, but there are other stories like intertwined at the same time. Obviously they have to do that for TV shows just to make it more interesting. But yeah, definitely new obsession. I'm continuing with the Bridgerton series. I think I've just got the 3rd book available on my library, so I'll be starting that one very soon. But the first book I gave 4.25 stars, and the second one I gave 3.5 stars. I didn't enjoy the second book as much as I did the first book, and just wasn't a huge fan of Anthony's story. I really like Anthony as a character, but I wasn't really a huge fan of his story as such. But yeah, new obsession, Bridgerton. love it. And then I also read the first 2 books in the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. I do have the 3rd book as well, so I'm hoping to get to that one very, very soon while these are still fresh in my brain, so that I can get this trilogy done. And I think I ended up giving both of these books 4.25 stars each. I really, really enjoyed them. So the books follow 2 sisters and they enter into this competition which is called Caraval, and it's like magical competition kind of thing which is held by this guy called Legend. And no one knows who Legend is. He doesn't ever show himself, and I think during the games he can appear as someone else. Like he can change what he looks like pretty much. And these magical games, they're very different than I thought they were going to be. I thought they were going to be more kind of like, not Hunger Games, but like Hunger Games but without killing. No. I don't know, I just expected the games to be quite different than they actually were in the book. I thought there was going to be more of a clear, like you do this first, then you do this, and then you do this, and then you get to the end. But it was more sort of, I don't know, you'd have to just read it to understand what I'm going on about. But anyway, if you win Caraval, you win a wish. So anyway, Scarlett and her sister get taken into these games. Scarlett's sister Donatella actually gets taken, and you've got the aim of the game in Caraval in the first book is to find Donatella, which is her sister. So obviously Scarlett is wanting to find her sister, and then stuff happens. There's a romance that blossoms and that sort of thing, and I did really, really enjoy it. It kept me hooked, and the chapters were quite long and very, very fast paced, so love that. And then the second book, Legendary, focuses around Donatella, so it's more her story. And there is another game of Caraval in this book as well, and there is also a romance as well. And then there's always just so many twists at the end of these books as well, like things you weren't expecting, or in my case I wasn't expecting them, so it was just nice to have those twists in the end. They're very, very unique books. I've not read anything like this before, but yeah, I'm hoping to get onto the last book finale very soon so that I can get this series finished. I also read on my Kindle Redeemed by Lauren Asher, which is the 4th and final book in the Dirty Air series by Lauren Asher, and I didn't really enjoy most of the books in this series. I feel like they were all okay. I mean, the second book in the series I really didn't like, but the rest of them, they were just all okay. But this one was a lot better. This was definitely my favourite in this series, and I can understand why a lot of other people have said the same thing. I ended up giving this one 4.25 stars, and I think the highest I'd given any of the other books was a 3.5, so it's definitely a lot higher rating than the other ones in the series. And this 4th and final book follows Chloe and Santiago, and Santiago's on, like, he was on the Formula 1 team, but he had an accident and he's lost his leg, so he's now got like a fake leg. So he's lost his confidence, he's not in a good place in his life, he's not in a good place mentally either. And then there's a character called Chloe. I can't remember even where this book's set. It's set in like Italy or something, I can't even remember, but she goes there, like she doesn't live there, but she goes there to visit because she finds out her dad lives there, and she's never met her dad before, and she wants to obviously form a relationship with her dad. So that's how, and then she kind of ends up bumping into Santiago, and that's how they meet. And then there's sort of like a fake dating thing that happens, and then their romance progresses from there. So it was really good. I did really enjoy it. I enjoyed both the characters, so this one was a lot more just interesting in general. 4.25 stars for that one. I do recommend this book. Even if you haven't read the rest of the books in the series, I'd still recommend this, but obviously there are characters from the other books that appear in this one. But yeah, you could read this one on its own if you did want to. I've got 3 books left to go through with you, and then that will be it. So I've joined a book club with like some people that I used to know back in the day from school, and we meet up once a month. I've only been to 1 meeting so far, and then we pick a book to read, and then we all read it, and then in our next meet we will meet up and talk about it and discuss what our thoughts were and stuff. And the pick for May was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, and I had heard quite a few people talk about this book before, so I had heard of it before, but it wasn't really one that was on my radar. I didn't really know too much about it. It just didn't really appeal to me from the cover, but actually I loved this book. I've heard very mixed reviews about this on YouTube, but this one was really, really interesting, and I feel like I flew through this book in a couple of days. I just was hooked. And it's pretty much about this girl who's friends with this like Asian American girl. They're both writers, and the Asian American girl, I can't remember her name now, Athena. So the main character is June, who's just white, a white woman. And then there's Athena, and Athena, her career explodes and she's a really successful author and stuff, and obviously June is quite jealous. And then at one point, this isn't really a spoiler because it happens literally right at the beginning of the book, June and her are celebrating something, and and Athena chokes on a pancake and dies right in front of June's eyes. And June decides to pick up Athena's like manuscript for a book that she was writing and take it as her own. So then she like publishes it and pretends that it's her own story. The story that Athena had written is actually about the Chinese labourers during the war. So obviously a white author publishing this sort of book, it creates some controversy and stuff happens, and yeah, it's just really, really interesting and really fast paced. It's sort of a mixture between like a thriller and a literary fiction, because I feel like there were some like thrilling aspects of this book as well, and it's kind of just it made my mind really conflicted, because I kind of didn't want June to get caught out, just because even though she was a bad person and she was stealing a book that wasn't written by her, but in a way you don't really want her to get caught. But yeah, there's loads of stuff that happens in this book. It's just really, really good. I would definitely recommend picking this up, even if it's not your normal kind of read, because this isn't the normal thing I'd kind of read, but I did really love this. And I gave it 4.25 stars, so I do recommend that one. And then I read my favourite book of the past few months. My camera died, I am back. But anyway, what was I saying? I absolutely loved this book so much, and it was a new release that came out in April, and that is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. And spoiler alert, I gave this 5 stars. This is the third book that I've read by Abby Jimenez ever, and I've given all 3 of the books that I've read 5 out of 5 stars. I just love her. She's my new favourite author. I feel like any book that she releases in the future I'm going to pre-order, because I just love her books so much. They're just the easiest romances to read. They're so easy to read. They're so good. They've got emotional aspects to them as well, and they've also got like cute romances, things that make me giggle. They're just so good. I just love them so much. And I do own this book, but my mum's actually borrowing it at the moment. I'm forcing her to read it, even though she doesn't need forcing, she wants to read it, but it's just I want her to read it so badly because I know she would love it, and I loved it. And this book's about Justin and Emma, and basically it starts off with Justin, he's posted on Reddit about basically every time he dates somebody, once they break up, the person he was dating goes to find the love of his life and end up in a happy relationship forever, blah blah blah. And he thinks it's like a curse, so he posts on Reddit a story about that basically, and just complaining about it. And then Emma sees the post on Reddit and she's like, oh my god, this is exactly how I feel. This is what happens to me every time I date someone. So they end up messaging each other. They decide to meet up and fake date, and then they agree to have, I think, 4 dates or something, and then they're going to break up. And then once they break up, they think their curse is going to be broken, and they'll both go on to find the love of their life, because obviously they've both got this kind of curse, so it will like counterbalance each other. And I feel like that premise is very unrealistic, and I don't feel like that curse, but it's not, obviously that's not going to work in reality. It made for a really fun plot, and this book was just so good, and I just loved it so much. It's also just got really emotional aspects to it as well, because Justin's going through a hard time with his family life, and also Emma's going through a hard time as well, because she's got a lot of trauma going on from her childhood and stuff. So there's those aspects put into it as well as the romance and stuff. And also there are a lot of characters that appear in this book from her previous other ones that I've read, which is Part of Your World and Yours Truly. So I'd read those 2 first if you want to read this book. I would definitely recommend reading those first. Part of Your World first, then Yours Truly, and then Just for the Summer, this one, because there are some characters that appear in this book in unexpected ways, and I thought that was just really, really clever, and I did really enjoy that about this book as well. So overall, 5 out of 5 stars, one of my favourites of the year. I think only 3 books I've given 5 stars this year, I think, are all her books, I think. I can't remember, but anyway, I've just loved them so much. So definitely read this book. And then finally, the other day, I just finished The Lies You Told by Harriet Tice. I'd read Blood Orange by her, which was this one. This is like a, can't take it off, it's stuck on there. And I really enjoyed Blood Orange when I read it. And this one I thought it'd probably be good as well. It's written by the same author, but this one I was quite disappointed by, to be honest. It was okay, but it was just a bit of a weird plot. It wasn't my favourite plot to read about, and it's sort of this woman and her daughter moved back to where the mum used to live and grew up, and she went to this school and stuff, and she's putting her daughter into that school, and the school, she had a horrible experience when she went there, so I don't know why, but there is a reason she is putting her daughter into this school. It's something about inheritance from her mum or something, but anyway, she puts her daughter into this school, and this school, the mum's there and everything, they're really, really horrible. they're really horrible and everyone's really competitive at this school, and I feel like there was kind of like a cult vibe going on. It felt like all the mums were like part of a cult or something. It's not, that's not what it is, but it just gave me that kind of vibe, and it just gave me this very, very dark, weird vibe in this book. I don't know. And then the plot just got a bit crazy, and I just wasn't a huge fan of this plot in this book, basically. It was alright. I gave it 3.25 stars. It wasn't terrible. It still kept me hooked and I finished it pretty quickly, but yeah, just wasn't my absolute favourite thriller. That is all the books that I read in the past couple of months. I did read quite a few like alright books, and then I did read quite a few really, really good books, so I'm pretty pleased. It did take me quite a while. I was in a bit of a reading slump, sort of, in April, beginning of May. I was kind of going for a bit of a slump, but I think I'm hopefully out of it by now because I'm reading a bit quicker again now, which is what I like. I'm not gonna pick a TBR for June because I'm kind of really enjoying mood reading at the minute, and I'm kind of enjoying reading like summary romances and stuff, so I feel like I'm just gonna go down that route for June, and then I'll see how I feel after that and maybe pick a TBR for July. I'm also going on holiday for a week at the end of June, so that's another reason I didn't really want to pick a TBR, because I'm going away. I won't probably read that much when I'm away. But anyway, these are the books that I read during April and May. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see more from me, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!